Hey everybody. This video is walk you guys through your third essay assignment. This essay is going to switch gears from what we've done in the last two essays completely. So make sure that you are not trying to continue on with the same vein that we've done in the last two essays. We're entirely changing our focus here. So this essay is going to be a literary analysis essay, which looks at one or more aspects of a piece of literature read in this unit. So you basically utilize the same skills that you've learned, the argumentation skills, and apply that to analysis of a piece of literature. So you're going to develop a written argument over one of the stories that you read in this unit, analyzing that in terms of the literary merit and the narrative elements that you saw. So again, this must be one of the short stories read in this unit. Please do not submit an essay about a different short story from the same author. It will not get graded. So please just make sure you are adhering to that requirement. You're going to develop a written analysis of that particular work, looking at the literary terminology from the course lectures, making sure you're analyzing things like characterization, setting, point of view, conflict, etc. So you're going to create a concrete thesis argument around a central literary focus and include the main ideas supported by evidence from the text. So what this means is there are a lot of things that you guys could consider across these stories. So choose one of them first: Hills Like White Elephants, Yellow Wallpaper, Cask of Amontillado, or Everyday Use. Think about things like, what is the primary literary element you want to focus on? Is it setting? Is it conflict? Is it characterization? That will help keep your argument narrow and focused rather than trying to cover too many things at once. Is there a particular literary theory you could apply to your analysis? So do you want to look at this through um, new historicism or another literary lens, or do you want to look at it through I don't know, feminist theory? What's the argument that you're making about the literary element? So what is the author's goal in using that element? For example, why is it important that the Cask of Amontillado is set, if you're going to look at setting, is set in the catacombs? Or why is dialogue so important in Hills Like White Elephants, or symbolism in the Yellow Wallpaper, or imagery um, in Everyday Use? So think about what the primary element is that you want to focus on, and then think about what are the other elements that help achieve that goal. So what is the author trying to say or do by utilizing these literary elements? Because the author could very well just come out and state in Hills Like White Elephants they're talking about abortion, but he doesn't. And why is that? Why does the author keep this cloaked using dialogue? What's the purpose of that? And then what are the other literary elements that help support that intent? So, for example, why does Hemingway include the symbolism of the railroad tracks as a representation of the crossroads of this relationship? Why does he use the allusion to the idiom, elephants in the room? Why does Charlotte Perkins Gilman use the imagery of this putrid yellow wallpaper to represent the madness of this character? Or why is the conflict between man versus man conflict in the Cask of Amontillado? How does that help build, the message or intent behind Poe's use of that literary element? Or in Everyday Use, why does she use? Why does Alice Walker use, certain symbolism related to um, the quilts or Mama or any of the other characters? And what does that mean? So the last thing you can also think about is kind of how the author's own background influences the meaning found in the work. So in every one of these works, maybe a little less with the Cask of Amontillado, but almost with every one of these works, they are heavily influenced by the experiences of the author themselves. So in Hills Like White Elephants, Hemingway was an expat who lived in Europe who went through the war. The Yellow Wallpaper, Charlotte Perkins Gilman herself went through the rescue. And in Everyday Use, her own identity as a female author plays into this story. And then what critique can you make about this in a scholarly manner? So you need to include at least two research sources in your work. One of them must be from the library database. So one of these has to be a scholarly article from the library database. When you're searching for those, you can search by the title of the text, you can search by the author. You'll find plenty of scholarly articles about all of these short stories. So I might suggest starting there and seeing where your research kind of takes you. Make sure you cite them. Make sure you include a bibliography. It should have at least three entries on it. One should be the short story, and then at least two should be the sources that you use. As far as source material, make sure, again, you're using credible sources, things that have like a .edu or a PBS, that kind of thing works well. I would not use sources like 123helpme.com. Make sure that you are integrating quotes from the text that show your audience what you're talking about. So this is your evidence in this case. So quotes from your source material, your outside sources, and quotes from the text themselves. So for example, just like in your first two essays where you integrate quotes from research, or your second essay where you integrated quotes from research that shows your audience what you're talking about, you do the same thing here, whether you're using primary or secondary sources. So if I'm talking about the setting of the catacombs contributing to the tension between the characters in the Cask of Amontillado, I'm going to pull in quotes from the short story that talk about the setting of the catacombs or how creepy it was or whatever it might be. If I am talking about the round character development of Mama or Maggie in everyday use, then I might pull in a quote or two that shows that character's growth. If I'm talking about the importance of certain symbols in Hills Like White Elephants, I'm going to pull in a quote from that short story that shows that symbol being discussed. For example, the hills themselves, the crossroads, whatever it might be, the railroad. And then I would also do the same thing with my source material to help show my audience what I'm talking about or help prove my point. So again, have a clear thesis and main ideas and expand on those with good evidence from the sources and from the text. Use those specific words, phrases, or passages as quotes to support your claims and expand on them with your own analysis. Your essay is going to be 3 to 4 pages in length. It's due on Sunday, December 3rd at 11:59 p.m. Your minimum page length must be met. Proper MLA is required. Everything's checked for plagiarism, and a bibliography is required as noted. You will be doing an outline in this one, so that will be completed as a separate assignment. Again, that will be part of your final essay grade as well. So it's designed to help boost your grade even just a little bit more, give you those 10 or 15 points. And then the final draft should include good close analysis of the work and its major concepts, good evidence to support your claims from the primary and secondary sources, proper number of sources, proper page length MLA formatting and citations, a fully developed essay structure including an intro, main ideas, and a conclusion, and careful, clear organization of all your ideas. So when you're thinking about some things that you could write about, again, I do suggest you kind of choose one main literary element to focus on and then bring in the other few literary elements as part of that discussion. Don't try to cover 10 different things. You're not going to have enough depth of analysis if you do that. So you can talk about things like characterization, and within that you could talk about archetypes, protagonists, antagonists, development, flat, round, static, etc. You could talk about literary devices like similes, metaphors, irony, flashbacks. You could talk about the structure of the story. So you could talk about the dramatic arc, the rising action, the climax, the falling action. You could talk about conflict. So this is man versus society, man versus nature. The point of view. Is it first person? Is it third person omniscient? Why does that matter? You could look at literary concepts like themes, symbols, allusions, etc. And then lastly and not least, you could look at the historical context as well. So you could look at the author's background, the events surrounding that work, what were the social, ethical, or moral issues being discussed, so on and so forth. So I want you guys to choose the story that was of most interest to you and the thing about that story, the literary element within that story that really was most interesting to you. And please let me know if you have any questions as you work, but go ahead and move on.